Dear students, in this session, we will discuss Adam Smith's theory of international trade, that is, trade based on absolute advantage. Trade based on absolute advantage by Adam Smith. Adam Smith. It is one of the major assaults on mercantilism. According to Adam Smith, a nation's wealth is reflected in its productive capacity, that is, its ability to produce goods and services, and not in its holding of precious metals. A nation's wealth is reflected in its ability to produce goods and services, not in the holding of precious metals. And according to Adam Smith, mercantilists failed to draw a distinction between what is known as wealth and treasure. According to Adam Smith, mercantilists failed to distinguish between wealth and treasure. Wealth means stock of consumable and durable goods, stock of natural resources, stock of human skills, etc. So, wealth means stock of consumable and other durable goods, stock of natural resources, stock of human skills, etc. Stock of precious metals is nothing but treasure. So, according to Adam Smith, the wealth consists of stock of these items. Its ability to produce depends on the stock of natural resources, human skills, capital, etc., not the stock of treasure. Adam Smith also held the view that to increase the wealth of all the nations, free trade is required. Free trade increases the wealth of all the nations. To increase the wealth of all the nations, there should be no restrictions on the inflow of goods and services. What is required is free trade. And he started his analysis by considering two nations. This can be extended to any number of nations. By considering two nations, and his analysis has shown that both nations will benefit. Both nations will benefit if they engage in trade. Remember this, two nations will voluntarily engage in trade if and only if trade is beneficial to both nations. If it is a loss to one nation, or if one nation will not gain anything, it will not engage in international trade. So, according to R. Smith, if both nations voluntarily engage in trade, both nations will gain. So, the questions are, how does this mutually beneficial trade take place? How does the mutually beneficial trade take place? What guarantees that voluntary trade will be mutually beneficial? And a second issue is, from where do these gains from trade, from where does this gains from trade come? And according to Adam Smith, mutually beneficial trade is based on absolute advantage. Mutually beneficial trade is based on absolute advantage. Let me give a formal definition of absolute advantage. When one nation is more efficient than another in the production of one commodity, but less efficient than the other nation in the production of a second commodity, then both nations can gain by each specializing in the production of the commodity of its absolute advantage and exchange part of its output with the other nation for the commodity of its absolute disadvantage. That is the explanation of absolute advantage. If one nation is more efficient than the other in the production of one commodity, the other is more efficient and less efficient than the other in the production of another commodity, both the nations will gain if each nation specializes in the production of the commodity of its absolute advantage and exchange part of its output with the other nation for the commodity of its absolute disadvantage. This is the definition of absolute advantage. And by this process, resources are utilized in the most efficient way and output of both the commodities will increase. If a nation specializes in accordance with the absolute advantage, resource allocation becomes more efficient all over the world when we consider the world as a whole, and output of both the commodities will increase. And the increase in the output of both the commodities, increase in the output of both the commodities measure gains from specialization. Gains from specialization. Increase in output of both the commodities measure the gains from specialization. Gains from specialization, and the gains will be divided between nations. So, if each nation specializes in accordance with the commodity of its absolute advantage, then output of both the commodities will increase. This increase in output is known as gains from specialization and will be divided between nations. As an example, due to climatic conditions, Canada is more efficient in the production of wheat, whereas less efficient in the production of bananas. On the other hand, Nicaragua is more efficient in growing bananas but less efficient in wheat. So we will say that Canada has an absolute advantage in the production of wheat and Nicaragua has an absolute advantage in the production of bananas. Under these circumstances, both Canada and Nicaragua will benefit if Canada specializes in the production of wheat, the commodity of its absolute advantage, and Nicaragua specializes in bananas, the commodity of its absolute advantage, and Canada share some of its wheat for Nicaragua's bananas. As a result, both output of both wheat and bananas will increase and consumers will get more output of both commodities. And this is what is known as gains from specialization in accordance with the absolute advantage. Now, in this analysis or in this viewpoint, a nation is not different from an individual. An individual will not attempt to produce all the commodities required by him. He will produce only those commodities that he can produce more efficiently and exchange part of its output for other commodities he wants. So farmers will specialize in the production of agricultural commodities. Business houses will specialize in the production of industrial goods. And they exchange commodities with each other so that total output and welfare of all the individuals will increase. The same rule is applicable in the case of nations also. This is the essential idea of absolute advantage suggested by Adam Smith. So while mercantilists believed that one nation could gain at the expense of another nation and advocated strict government restrictions on international trade, Adam Smith and other classical economists believed that all the nations will gain from free international trade and advocated a policy of free trade or laissez-faire. As in free international trade is gainful to all the nations, Adam Smith and other classical economists suggested free trade or laissez-faire, no interference of government in the arena of international trade. And international trade causes world resources to be efficiently utilized and it results in what is known as maximization of world welfare. Now, the only exception or a few exceptions to this trade policy is the case of industries requiring protection. That is a point which we will see later. So, there is no need for any interference in the flow of goods and services. Free trade is the best, laissez-faire is the best policy, except a few industries of national importance or those industries which are supposed to enhance national welfare. Now, these are the ideas of Adam Smith and classical economics in general. But it is paradoxical that Even though free trade results in optimum division of resources across the world and optimum utilization of resources, nations impose many restrictions on what is known as free flow of international trade. And trade restrictions are generally imposed by nations, saying that such restrictions are important from the point of view of national welfare. But these arguments are not correct. It is against the recognized wisdom, and only a few industries and workers associated with these industries who may be hurt by free international trade are suggesting or favoring or pressurizing governments for protection. What is best is free flow of international trade. Also, trade restrictions benefit a few at the expense of many. Trade restrictions will benefit a few industries and those associated with these industries, but it will hurt the larger sections of the population as they will be forced to pay a higher price for their products. Also, it is important to note that Adam Smith's theory at that time served the interest of factory owners who were able to pay lower wages due to cheap wage. The famous corn laws, etc., are familiar to you, and it was harmful to the landowners. The prices of corn decreased due to free import of corn from the rest of Europe. So these are the basic ideas of Adam Smith. Free international trade results in international division of labor and enhancement of world welfare by producing more quantities of all the goods involved. Now, in the next session, we will give an illustration of absolute advantage.